Now, these two moving lights here, you can see those ones, all right? They're right there, okay? I'm going to record those in a position that is relatively obvious for us to see. So they're going to point there, okay? I'm going to record that as Q15, okay? Now, in Q14, they're pointing somewhere else, okay? They're all just pointing in their home position straight down. Now, what I'll do, I'm going to bring up some stage lights so that you can see these lights move. All right, so keep your eye on those little moving lights. I'm going to run Q14. Now, you remember Q14 is the one where we've got our little dot moving across the front of the stage. We're coming down to the end of that queue now. It's hit the end of that queue, and oh, look at that. Those other lights have sneakily got themselves into position, and all I've actually done is recorded them into Q15 so that when I hit go, look at that, they've faded up in position, ready to go. All right, so that is called move in black. Now, let me take control of those lights again. So if we go back to step 14. Now, step 14, you can see here on the moving light display that it's telling me that the pan and tilt values are moving in black, getting ready for Q15. All right? Let's say that that is a particularly a quiet part of the show, and I want to put the move in black somewhere, let's say Q5, because we haven't used these lights at all before in this show. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the two lights. So I'm going to go 101 through 102. These are the two lights that we just used in Q15. And you'll see that on our M keys, we have a little thing that says mark. Now, if I click on mark, or if I hit Alt S1, it's going to put the word mark in the command line, and I can say, okay, those two lights, mark them back in Q5. So all I'm going to do is hit the number 5. 101 through 102, mark Q5. Yep, that's what I want it to do. Do that. Now, what it has done up here in Q5 is it's added what's called a part queue. Now, we'll talk about part queues a little bit later, but this particular special form of part queue is when that change, getting ready for Q15, will happen. So as I step into Q5, now we can do this by watching the screen this time, so you can see the pan and tilt values. I just need to stop that chase that's going there. Okay, beautiful. Now, as I move into Q5, you will see the pan and tilt values here get ready for Q15. Okay, and that full text there says Q5, mark for Q15. All right, and what it's also showing you there is where it's actually marked to. Now that's all very well and good. All right, and you go through, and if you went all the way through to your show, you'd see that in Q15 it would fade up in exactly the right position. But what happens if in Q8 you decide, oh, you know what, those lights aren't doing anything, I want to use them here. If I was to grab 101 and 102 and send them to full, what they've done is they've moved away from that mark position and gone to the position that they were in prior to the mark. Now, this is really important. The grandma console doesn't do this. I'm sure it probably will eventually, but if on the grandma console you actually brought them up, they would be pointing in that mark position. You'd say, oh great, that's great, I'll record them exactly there, hit update and enter and then keep going. Next time you actually run the cues, you would discover that they've actually been, because you haven't recorded a position for them in Q8, they're pointing in the wrong place. So what this does is it automatically assumes when you bring them up and take control over them, okay, you're doing the mark queue differently now. So we modify the position of those two lights, so I'll just pan and tilt them somewhere else. All right, and we'll update Q8 there. And now our mark queue back in Q5, so if I jump to Q4, so go to 4, enter. When I go to Q5, you'll see that what the part queue has already done is it's looked forward to see when that's next used and said, oh look, it's actually used in Q8, so I'm going to mark for Q8 rather than Q15, which is where it was before. Okay, so now I can actually happily run through my show all the way through to Q8, and those two lights have just faded up beautifully exactly in the position that I set for them in Q8, which is exactly the way you want the console to run.